much, and good afternoon, distinguished Chairman of Council, President, members of the Council, and distinguished members present. It's a tough thing when you have the responsibility of standing between people and food. So we'll try to make the 45 minutes quite worthwhile, and we hope it's going to stimulate appetite. It's indeed a distinguished panel I have here, and such a simple job. And the whole focus is about driving Nigeria's economic transformation, the role of corporate governance. That's what we're here to discuss. And it's not unlikely that, because these are not convenient conversations, is why we don't have many people. Because these are tough decisions. I mean, these are tough discussions. And I like what Prince Ademili said about being blunt. When we're not blunt, we're not ready for the real meaning of the word transformation. We may have different thoughts in our minds, but if we're not ready to walk the talk, it's just another talk show. So at the end of the session, it should be clear to us, what have we invested 45 minutes in? We're here to look about the digital transformation of Nigeria and the role of corporate governance. And there must be a reason why we're talking about the digital transformation of Nigeria. I mean, within these 2 days, we've largely been a mono-product dependent economy. What is next? The vagaries and challenges associated with that. So why are we focusing on the digital transformation of Nigeria? Why are we bothered about the impact and the implication? And without wasting time, I want to invite Mr. Femi Williams, who's the keynote speaker. I want to ask that the distinguished panelists will take him up on the points he's going to raise, and definitely the audience. And at the end of the day, want to leave here with a clear position. What are we going to do, those of us on whom it's dependent, to ensure that corporate governance plays a strategic role within Nigeria's digital economic transformation? Thank you very much. Mr. Femi Williams.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, the past president, the DG, and the distinguished audience. Let me also stand or sit on the existing protocol, right? Media, can you help? All right, my job is also very simple. It's to prepare ground for the discussion we are going to have here today. Many of the speakers, including the keynote speakers, has also done justice to my topic, right, by giving us some of the things I even recommended in the final recommendation here. So it's to talk about the significance of corporate governance in Nigeria digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is a buzzword. It has come with various forms. Some people call it business process re-engineering. Some people call it optimization. All kinds of buzzwords that come. But the in thing now is, so I will also try and break some of the complicated words. You know, it's not just the medical profession that has jargons. The computer people, we have plenty too. Okay? So I'll try and break it down to simple words for all of us to understand. Corporate governance, without wasting most of our time, it involves a framework of rules, practices, processes by which an entity is directed or controlled. And I'm using the word entity here loosely, whether public or private sector. Before now, when you talk about corporate governance, it's mostly related to private sector. And even private sector, big organization. Small organizations don't worry and they don't care. But even startups now, people are just soliciting for funds, right? One of the things that the investors look for is how compliant you are with your corporate governance rules and ethics. It also encompasses balancing the interests of all stakeholders. The stakeholders of businesses are not just the owners, not just the shareholders. The environment, okay, that where you live. In fact, the climate is not part of the environment of business. And you have to remember each and every one in the 360 degree sphere for you to be able to do successful business. So effective corporate governance aims to achieve balance between accountability, transparency, and then without losing focus of the strategic goals of the business. The second major word in my presentation is digital transformation. Okay, this refers to integration of digital technologies into various aspects of organization, fundamentally changing how it operates or how it delivers value to its stakeholders. And it involves things around new technologies, new processes, cultural shifts, new customer experience, and sometimes even the entire overall business outcome. Now, There are some words that always cause confusion. Digitization, digitalization, digital transformation. Let me try and break it down a little bit for benefit of all of us. So when you have a file in paper form and you scan it and you turn it to electronic form, that is what digitization means, converting physical to digital representation. Meanwhile, when you get to the next level is what they call digitalization, and that is the ease of digital technologies to change business model. So when you use the thing you have converted into electronic form and use it in processing to do your business and making it better, that is digitalization. Meanwhile, digital transformation is when you now use this thing to enable or transform or translate your business. That is digital transformation. I hope it is clear. People use these words interchangeably and it is confusing. So first is turning it into electronic form, right? Second one is to change a little part of your business model. The third one is when you do rapid and radical changes. That is transformation, and transformation is usually long term. Okay, I have just 15 minutes, so I will try and do justice to now. That is, digitization is not working here. Media, you see? Transformation has to do with changes. If changes are difficult, right, you should assume that digital transformation will be much more challenging. But so we are on this surface of the earth today, there are more devices than human beings. In fact, by 2030, there will be like 50 billion devices. That is like 4 times the number of people that are on the surface of the earth. And by then, these devices are not just going to be dumb equipment like this. They have intelligence and they are talking to each other. All right? So to make changes in business environment is now more complicated because we are not just thinking about human beings, we're also talking about things talking to themselves. Okay? So let's try and differentiate between the two and these two concepts. Corporate governance has something to do with stakeholders' trust and confidence, about risk, managing the risk of business, strategic decision-making, structured and organized decision-making, compliance with regulation, innovation and adaptability, investor confidence, human capital management, and long-term sustainability. These are some of the things that come up on the table or that are the pillars that form why we need to do corporate governance. For digital transformation concerns, rather, we look at specific and focused initiatives. We'll give some example later. When you look at specific or focused initiative about your business, about government, about things that we are doing, all right? Mobile technology adoption, fintech innovation, e-government services. We've heard a lot about digitalizing government business, transforming business, or various initiatives. Also, we hear a lot about e-commerce and retail, digital skills development. Oops. That thing jumped. Oh, it's there. Sorry. Okay. So the head is there, the neck is, the body is somewhere else. Okay. Has jumped. Okay. It has to do with structural thing that you do to your business or to government, to any entity you are running. Digital infrastructure, startups and innovation hub, those are projects, those are specific initiatives. Now, let us look at some statistics in our environment. Now, okay, the digital landscape, we know how many we are in Nigeria. It looks like there's a consensus around 220 to 10 million, though the last census and this one does not agree. But it looks like there's a consensus around that, okay? Age distribution, we are very favorable. I mean, between 0 and 54 years, right, is about 92, 93% of the population. Youthful population that are supposed to be very active and productive. Internet users population is around 55% now. That is Nigerian statistics as of January 2023. Mobile telephone users are 193, urban dwellers 58%. Median mobile internet connection speed is also growing, it's around 19 megabits per second. Median fixed internet about 11. And social media is also growing rapidly. So the conclusion is that we have the right population We have the right distribution, all right? And then we also have an exciting and predictable growth on all fronts. So the digital landscape is getting expanded by the minute and is becoming more and more interesting. Okay, the reason why people use internet, these are statistics, providing information, right? Staying in touch with friends and family, and so on and so forth. I think you should be thinking, does this apply to you? And the top site that people visited, chat, I mean, you know WhatsApp has taken over the world. I was talking with a friend and I checked, he has about 8,000 and something contacts in his address book and only 3 had emails. So phone number is enough, it's chasing away emails gradually, except for things that you really, really needed and a footprint. WhatsApp does it better. Okay, next. Okay, so corporate governance has some pillars, and any organization that implements this for your organization, for your business, these are the things that we encourage: responsible, ethical business conduct. The first one is you're going to have system of rules and practices and processes by which a company is directed and controlled. And it is important because management will go, management will come. MD will be fired today, anyone will be employed. But this set of rules will be there. And that is what promotes good culture, promotes good conduct, and good decisions across organization and sometimes across generations. There'll be ethical decision making within the organization. So you will not have reasons where Oga and the chairman will go into formal board meeting and discuss how to share money. Because third party will come and they can audit your report, they can audit the minutes at any time. Accountability for actions. I mean, I was a group managing director. If it is found that I stole money like 5 years ago, there's likelihood of somebody coming to arrest me. All right, I will not just walk away with bad conduct. Engagement with all stakeholders. So you talk to the regulator, you talk to your staff, you talk to the board, you talk to CSR, the neighbor. Management of risk. Risk is, in fact, there are now more risks outside the organization than inside, because a lot of effort has been spent studying and managing internal risks. Right? They are still there, but there are now more risks, direct and indirect. You know, competition is also multi-heralded, comes from different fronts. Then there's emphasis on long-term sustainability. So as you are taking decisions for short-term, you also must keep your eyes on the long-term, and corporate governance encourage that. Then compliance with applicable law. If you're in a well-regulated industry, you'll be sanctioned immediately if you don't perform, okay? And even if you are not regulated, the corporate governance will set the rules, what you must do, what you must not do, right? At every point in time. So it encourages deliberate planning and execution of organization plans. You can look at new technology and you want to jump on it on the same time. Innovation can come in various ways. We want to jump at it, while corporate governance will put order into it, right? So as you see new technology, you're going to go into it in line with the rules and the process and the governance principle of the organization. So it encourages digital strategy alignment. We IT people were the worst. If you have iPhone 10, the day they make iPhone 11, iPhone 10 is working, you tell the management it's not working. It's slow, right? Whether they can afford it or not, there's this thing in us that want more gigabytes, all right? But if corporate governance says you have to give justification, that means you must give justification before you can get a new iPhone, okay? So you can ensure that there's alignment between new things you are doing and the corporate goal of the organization, and in line with the strategy that has been set. Risk management will also be better, because if it is in line with your corporate governance principle, you must do it. And if you don't do it, there will be sanctions. Your KPIs, how you are rewarded, how you are praised, right, is dependent on this. So risk management is actually a chunk part of corporate governance that you cannot do without. You cannot forget it, okay? Then data governance and privacy. There's a new data protection act signed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It has teeth, and the data commissioner is going around educating everybody that I'm still coming to bite you. There are new rights for consumers, data owners. 5 rights. You have the right to say, don't process my data again. In fact, you can tell your bank to forget me, not just close my account, delete my record. Some of the rights that the data subject now has, and there are 5 of them. And the punishment for not doing it is very big. So it's coming there. Technology investment decisions. I mentioned it. Technology, when you want to decide for new technologies, oftentimes you have choices, many choices, all right? And before you finish your decision, you have another choice that is there in the market. Corporate governance will have defined what you must do and what you must not do along the journey, okay? Digital talent, skills development, skill acquisition is also important. So if you must have a backup, right, to this as a key skill, then the management does not have a choice than to quickly look for and get a replacement for me if it's been identified. Then innovation governance, so the mechanism for promoting and governing innovation itself will be, there must be provision in the corporate governance to do it. And then adaptability and flexibility, so building the organizational culture that is adaptable to rapid technology changes. This is the most difficult thing. A lot of culture are very stiff, and those organizations will run into trouble very soon. In fact, most times now, organizations will dissolve the internal bureaucracies, bundle 2 departments or 3 departments together if they have to do it to satisfy an external customer that bring value to the organization. There was a time when you have to, the accountants, they always sit in the cubicle with a small window. You know, you have to knock and then they open the window before you talk to them, all right? But these days, number 1, there is no cash anymore. Number 2, the process will go through account and audit and see and marketing within minutes. So you cannot have a department that is isolated, all right? So that flexibility is a culture that every organization must build in, and you can achieve this once it is accepted as a corporate governance practice, then organization will be forced to go that way. Now, let's go to public sector. We've talked about them a little bit. All the initiatives that you see here, they are extremely good. There's none that is bad. If you look at the principle or the document, they're all good. But how many of them have been impactful over a long time? Anchor borrower is the one that actually blocks my head. Some months ago, the last administration actually counted it as one of their successes. And then the new government said there are a lot of fraud, a lot of things around it. I cannot, the same government. So it means there is no continuity, there is nothing that nobody is, I mean, how can the last government say counted it as a gain? And the same audience will clap for them. And then some months later, another government had come and said, no, it's not good. I mean, there are a lot of frauds and billions and trillions of dollars. I mean, naira has been lost. I painted those 2 green. Can you see them? So I was just asking, and I know 2 people in those organizations, and the guy told me, you know why it's successful? They are foreign funded. These 2 projects, about 70% of the funding comes from international bodies. That is why they've been able to deliver value consistently over time. And at a time, one of them, I won't mention them, told me that even the funders, at a time they started paying the vendors directly. They stopped passing money through the government agency to the vendor. That's why they've been able to, I mean, polio is being eradicated. I don't know whether we've eradicated it completely, but they've done exceedingly well. The control of AIDS, they also did exceedingly well. How we were able to tame AIDS in this country. But look at they are fantastic program. Empower, I read the document. Anchor borrowers, I read the document. In fact, at the time I went to the governor of my state, they said, you are not doing well at all. This fund is there. Go, lead, you know. But see how it ended, all right? What could be the reason? The first one is vision and long-term commitment. It's been said there that when the president is sworn in today, within the next 2 years, he's looking at the next term. Even if he wants to be focused, the political party around him will say, okay, we have election to win, right? So there is this lack of long-term commitment. Regulatory and policy framework. The keynote speaker said here today that we've been looking for code of ethics for public sector. Meanwhile, one was made 2012, right? And the next government did not know. They have to go and reinvent the wheel again. Processes are bureaucratic. Government agencies are too strict, too divided in their own right, that to pass a document between Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Agri, to go to the minister and then minister down. When it's going back, go back up, minister back. That is 1 month of work. Okay, budgetary constraint. Budget is, I was talking to a friend of mine who is a senior public officer about the recent announcement by the president. We all clapped. This is the first time a president will challenge, I'm signing a bond with you. The man said, you don't know what you are talking about. That if it is not in the budget, it cannot be done. The process of doing it is complicated. So the budgetary constraints, the bureaucratic process is something that would discourage somebody who is very active and who wants to be productive in that sector. Political interference has been mentioned because many times, many of the decisions are made based on who you know or which party do you align. Or in political world, they say, if you join this party, your sins are forgiven. Okay? Now, lack of stakeholders' engagement is also a very common thing. My own industry, we woke up one day last year or 2 years ago, I found out that the development agency in our industry, I will not mention him, has a bill in House of Assembly. No consultation, nothing. And that thing was, they attempted it 3 times, but luckily it was not successful before the government left. Okay? Ethical consideration, when I was doing the presentation, I didn't want to call it corruption. But since somebody mentioned corruption here, so I will call it ethical consideration. Corruption is a major issue there. And then digital inclusion is also there. We are not at the same level at all. Some states, some areas are very, very poor. They have no access to internet. They have no access to power. So some of the things we designed for Lagos cannot work there. Okay. So I will make this simple proposal as a typical framework, right, that corporate governance, if you set rules around this, that any initiative for government should always have a strategic objective. And those objectives should be broken down into key initiatives, and there must be consideration for people and the finance that is required to do it. Okay? Now, 2, there must also be business case for each initiative, and there must be articulated expected deliverable and business outcome, cost benefit, and sustainability. Not just good on paper for now, but how will it, who will provide the money in 5 years' time, right? Even when government changes, will there be sustainability built into the product, into the initiative? Also, process and priorities. Not everything can be done, bam. We want to do loan for conditional cash transfer, as an example. If there are 20 million poor people in Nigeria, you can't give all of them at the same time. So there must be a reason, logic, model. How do you approach this, right? Before you go to the next one, right? So the priority and process of selecting priority must be also good. Impact must also be measured, all right? Effort also must be measured. Then the change management, because sometimes when you take a new process there, you need to reorientate people into how they're going to use it. So impact assessment must be done. Communication, training, and coaching plans must be well stated. Resistance management, if it is the kind of project that you know, if it gets to the south, they will say, no, we don't want this one. Then the change management, how do we reorientate? How do we educate? All that must be done. And then governance, what structure will govern it? How will reporting system? If they have to be taught under one ministry, how will the reporting and all that will be done? Okay, there also should be evaluation, there should be monitoring, and there should be reporting of progress, that this is progress. So if we can, this is just a framework from me, that should be in the corporate governance of every ministry, of every department, on every key initiative of government. It's a lot of work, but if this is done, the likelihood of the project succeeding, and succeeding over a long time, is very, very right. So applying this corporate governance principle, especially to public sector, to government, will breed transparency and accountability. There will be strategic alignment. I said there must be business impact analysis. So you have to go to the South and consult that we are going to do this project. We will not like it, but this is the message that we are going to tell them. It will lead to more efficient resource allocation, engagement of stakeholders, ethical decision-making, long-term and sustainability of our project, enhanced reputation too, and appropriate foreign direct investment. I was surprised one of my mentees, the guy is just bent on traveling. He's going to UK. They are stealing his mother's money at a time, but he failed. But then, this new project of the new minister, he got enlisted. I think they recruited him. He's in the process of being adopted to attend the training. He called me himself that he's not going. This was 2 days ago, right? There will be appropriate foreign direct investment. People will see that this country is transparent, and then they will be able to partner and do better business for the government. In conclusion, government have been regulating and they have created codes for the private sector for a long time. I know how many companies SEC has sanctioned, right, for not publishing forecasts on the right time, for not submitting financial reports. I think it is now time for government to strictly adopt or create, it was created in the morning, but keynote officer, I said we should adopt one of the ones that, and faithfully implement them for itself, for the benefit of all of us. Is this possible, or is this possible now? This is a question I think we need to answer at our session here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olufemi Williams, for delivering on the subject matter. And for us in the room, I think quite a number of things have been put on the table. And I want to start this discussion on the panel, focusing on the recommendation you had made. More like 7 major considerations for achieving corporate governance in digital transformation. I mean, yeah, we don't have the slide on the screen, but you had mentioned those. And I think it's for us as well on the floor. We're about 23 minutes into the 45-minute session. And the first one, you talked about digital strategy alignment. And like I said, that's where I want to start the conversation. Nigeria today has a national digital economic policy document. How many of us in the room are familiar with it? Great. We're talking about transformation, and the subject matter, the starting point thereof is that we must be involved, we must believe it's something that is important and not just an item at this annual conference. We must be very familiar to know that the future of Nigeria cannot continue to be dependent on oil and its contribution. What are the drivers of the transformation of this economy? Digital. And this was launched 4 years ago with major fanfare by the president, 2019. So there's a document that talks about the digital economic transformation of Nigeria. In October this year, another document has been presented, and that document that was launched in 2019 was a 10-year program, 2020 to 2030. What we want to achieve as a digitally transformed economy. The current Minister of Digital Economy has just introduced to us a component that's got a 4-year window, 2023 to 2027, 5 years. And I want to start with Dr. Coker. You've done quite a number of things, and for the sake and benefit of the audience, I'll just mention a few as we tie to this. Before you chose to come back to Nigeria, as a Nigerian, you were the Chief Information Officer of the UK Ministry of Justice. Before then, you were the Chief Technology Officer for Criminal Justice in the United Kingdom. And I just want to start this conversation. What do you think about the environment of corporate governance in Nigeria, especially as it relates to our digital engagements?
Yeah, good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'll adopt existing protocols for time. For there are a variety of aspects to governance. One, how you govern technology, and two, how technology enables governance, right? And you've got, for instance, a country-level governance, country-level impact of technology. You've got businesses, you've got individuals. You have e-governance, you have e-government, and you have e-citizen, right? And a whole variety of approaches. I mean, you talked about what I did in the UK. And one of the key things we had there was how you join up criminal justice. And it occurred to me that we needed to have a whole range of things, even before the internet was about, gosh, almost 20 years ago now. But we created virtual courts, which means you could use TV, interconnected networks. We didn't have the level of internet interconnectivity we have now. And believe it or not, judges would use cameras, TVs, and you have lawyers, and you have the defendants in the police. And we figured out how to do this, and we used it for guilty pleas. What it did was it actually gave a lot of traceability. It just used technology to nail efficiency and governance across the entire criminal justice system. So it made sense at the time that I was then going to pull together all these departments to become Ministry of Justice, and I was the initial CIO. Same thing's been happening over here, right? We've talked about a variety of about plans and documents, and they've been seen a way through. If you go back 25 years now, Dr. Ernest and Duque and a few people I see over here, they know themselves, have been in the transition of technology, telecoms, and so on. And the NCC has been a beacon of progressive governance, right? I mean, they won global awards and everything, something we should be proud of. And a lot of that legacy is down to Dr. Ndukwe, okay? In that, we now have some of the statistics you showed in terms of number of people connected to the internet. Teledensity is over 100%. We've set goals for broadband penetration, okay? And that has been progressing significantly. We had a goal that was go for 25% about 10 years ago. Then we said, okay, we'll go for 40%. We're now saying we'll go for 70%, right? What it's meant is that the broadband penetration in this country is such that about coming up to about 50%. Now 110 million people have access to broadband. 150 million have access to the internet. These are the kind of fundamentals that enable e-government, e-governance, whether it's the governance of technology or the governance of government, right? Statistics show, I mean, if we get some things right, it can be transformative. You know, I think one of the speakers said earlier on that if you increase your governance ranking by a certain point, you get 0.6 addition to GDP. For every 10% penetration of broadband, you can add 2.5% to your GDP. And it transforms communities, okay? And once you get that together, then you can start doing things around e-government because more people have access to, whether it's a mobile phone or whatever, to all of these things that you use to enable government or governance of people's lives, right? But it's not just getting you need broadband penetration. You've got to then drive broadband adoption, okay? And then you start to really get people into fintech, the kind of controls and governance you can get through fintech and the other things around access to e-government, right? So some of these fundamental things are needed to transform and create economic transformation.
How much of that do you think we have in place right now?
Oh,
We've got all the policies set up?
Yeah.
Do you sincerely believe we've got the corporate governance framework to deliver on this?
I think now framework at national level is one thing. We've got the data protection rules that have been coming into place. You know, governance of technology is a bit like having speed limits. It's for the good of the whole. So where you have things around frameworks around data protection, you have security, secured technology, very important. But there has to be light touch governance, in my view, enough to be for the good of the whole, but not to stifle the significant transformation you have through technology. But we are doing it.
We're doing all of what you think is required.
Yeah, because I'm talking about these fundamentals in terms of underlying infrastructure that you have to put in place at teledensity as well.
Okay, I get that. So maybe I take it to NIDA and the representative, and I know there's so much to say about all of this. And it's just for the sake of the audience. One, I think it will be helpful if you could get those two documents I spoke about earlier to know what are the potentials, and that's where I'm going to you. Digital transformation for us as a country. In the next 5 years, I believe, you're familiar with what the goals are. Would you want to share with us highlights of what should we expect in terms of digital transformation of Nigeria's economy in the next 5 years? What are the highlights?
Thank you very much. I want to thank the Institute for giving us the opportunity to be part of this. And I'm excited again to be with the panelists. We have seen a lot from the statistics and even from what Mr. Coker said. We have a lot of expectation for the country in the next 5 years. You have mentioned the strategic plan for the ministry, which talks about knowledge, policy, trade, innovation, and of course the prior or the antecedent document, policy, the NDEPs as well. There is actually no conflict, but what we are trying to do is to actually focus on what we believe can be achieved almost immediately, because Nigerians, we are almost impatient. All of us are impatient to get things done. So what we are trying to do at this moment is to look at what can be achieved very quickly. And the federal government has actually demonstrated that this is possible especially with the coming into force of the Nigeria Data Protection Act. We have recognized very quickly that this is the fourth industrial revolution, and that Nigerian businesses, for us to play in this revolution, there is need for trust. Nobody wants to do business with any country today that doesn't have this framework governance in place appropriately. People really want to know whether, for instance, you have a data center. If we migrate or transfer our data to Nigeria, are we sure it will be protected? What are the safeguards? Because in the world we live today, you call it a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's complex, and all of those. And the only thing that can guarantee, guarantee stability of some sort is that there should be a reference point, and that is the law that you have in place. So in the next 5 years, of course, for us as an agency of government, we are looking at job creation, and we have numbers for that. The ministry is looking at about 3 million jobs. For us as a commission, we are looking at creating at least 500,000 jobs in terms of data protection alone. And there is jobs just around being data protection officers in organizations. People want to know, directors, thankfully this is your platform. People want to know, before I do business with this company, are we sure of how they are going to keep this data? If you talk about data, if you talk about governance, corporate governance, probably 1994, you probably rely solely on the Companies and Allied Matters Act. But today, you have the Data Protection, you have the Cyber Crimes Act, you have Security and Exchange Commission Act, you have NOTAP, you have the tax laws, the fiscal responsibility, and all of those. So all these, they may not be in one single document, as it were, but they all form the background of where we think we can go. We are looking at having better broadband penetration. Recently, the NAD administration, of course, entered into an agreement with the Starlink for us to have penetration all over the country, wireless, because things around telemedicine, things around using AI, like you have in Kenya, where AI is being used to even monitor plant growth, whether diseases or even animals. whether they are doing well. You can use AI to do all of that. But AI will not work without broadband.
So you believe in essence that the objectives are achievable
They are
and that
really,
we're on the path to
yes, they are
achieving them?
achievable because they are smart. They are
Okay.
specific, they are measurable,
Right.
they are achievable, they are realistic, and they are time-bound.
Okay, I want to hold it on that because we're talking about these things at the national level.
Yes,
And we're talking about transforming the economy.
yes.
And I wouldn't bother to ask what we've done with the document that was launched in 2019 and where we're 5 years or 4 years down the line. So I'll just go straight to Amal. And she's done excellently well. And the point you just made is the number 4 on what Femi Williams had shared with us in his presentation, talking about data governance and privacy. Now let's get to those who are doing it within the framework government has created. Amal, congrats. You've got about 1,500 people on your payroll. And you've been running this business for the last 10 years. And the next 3 years, you want to triple this to 6,000 people. Can we give her a round of applause? And it's a gender-balanced organization where 50% of the employees are women. And you operate 3 centers in Nigeria. So from your point of view, the digital transformation of Nigeria's economy, based on what you've done so far, what are the prospects for us from the private sector perspective?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. It's really an honor to be addressing you today. So I always start with this. You know, Nigeria is already transforming from the private sector point of view. When you look at the number of tech companies that are springing out of Nigeria, the unicorns that are being created today, the investment that we've gotten into technology companies in the last 5 years, you would see that Nigeria is transforming, right? Africa, the international market is looking at Africa as the next destination for everything. And the reason why we're only 7 years old, we're not yet 10, we started 2016. And the reason why we're able to grow from 10 people to 1,500 is for one reason alone, technology. Without technology, our company cannot exist today, right? We are using technology to create employment. How do we use technology to change how Nigeria is operating today? Right? So from the private sector, to answer your question, $3.9 billion of investment came into Africa. More than 80% of it came to Nigeria. So it is transforming. How do we move it to the government? How do we involve technology and digitization to change this country? I always say this again and again. Technology is what will change Nigeria. The plans are there. Every parastatal has a plan. And if you look at that plan, you get goosebumps all the time. How can we implement it? And if we keep implementation based on theoretical viewpoint, reporting is not seen, there is no visibility, then we will always go back to the same situation that we have always, you know, where we always are. But if you look at a situation where every parastatal's achievement is digitized, you're able to see the performance of every ministry. Budget is being approved based on how you achieve your goals. Then every ministry is going to settle, is going to get up and achieve its strategic goals. So how do we do that? You know, that's what will really change this country.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, thanks again for the things you've done in that space. And you're in outsourcing business. And that talks about talents, Nigerian talents, who are able to provide services to organizations outside of Nigeria. And that can be a major revenue earner for Nigeria. And we can see that. So there's a push strategy that we deliberately plan that, which is what the new minister is trying to do. Skills, knowledge as a fundamental, the other 4 pillars on it. And that's a push. We're pushing our talents. The other that's happening is the dearth of skills there is forcing the world to come to us. And they're paying them in Forex. And we're talking about before now repatriation of Forex. Now, people are earning Forex here. And we're still talking about digital transformation of Nigeria's economy. But I want to take it, and like you rightly said, many times we think about the dichotomy of public sector, private sector, but we're talking about a whole here. At the last session, we learned about consequence management. And so I'm going to come to you, Femi. And I know you've been on so many national projects. You worked on the BVN, you were the director of the BVN project in this country. And you've worked on some other projects I'm aware of. There was NICOMSAT-1, Nigeria's satellite, that failed in 2008. A satellite failed. And we launched NICOMSAT-2. I will not know the commercial success story of NICOMSAT-2. I'm using those as a background to say and ask you, from your point of view, how much a risk is the absence of corporate governance or the non-compliance with corporate governance to the realization of Nigeria's digital transformation strategy?
Okay, thank you. It looks like the question is back to me. The idea is there was a plan, a digital transformation plan of the entire economy that talks about, I think, 8 pillars that were there. Skills development is one of them. Now, if that document had been a living document, by now, about 7, 8 years ago, all of us here in this room should be planning, should be strategizing based on the vision expressed in that document. There should have been positioning investments now or in future on it. Now, the new government has a right to amend it, but it should be presented first. This is the national plan. But this time, because we are looking at 4 years implementation, we're going to put emphasis on this part of it. That way, somebody who had invested in energy based on that plan, somebody who had invested will not feel left out. All right? That is what corporate governance should. The process for changing the plan should be in the plan. Right? I'm so sure that the current, I knew he was a very big and public figure before he became the minister. And directly or indirectly, he must have been consulted. And I'm sure he understands what is in that plan, right? It should be the plan we will put first. And then out of the plan, this new one should be espoused. What that means is that people who invested or who plan, right, based on that document for something that is not of importance now, will not be left out. That is why plans don't get followed. That plan is supposed to stimulate interest.
Yeah, but I think that's what it is.
Right?
That's what. Let me just quote him. This document, it's called the Strategic Plan for the Federal Ministry of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy.
Yes, please.
And it says the objective is accelerating our collective prosperity through technical efficiency, October 2023. And quoting the minister directly, this strategic blueprint articulates a vision for Nigeria that builds on the transformative power of digital technology and innovation to diversify and deepen our economy. And that's the minister himself. And I'm saying all these things are there. The focus of this session is corporate governance. How much can achievement of these lofty objectives, the figures we're quoting in dollars, how much of it can be threatened if corporate governance required to make it happen is not there?
I'm even saying the plan itself was celebrated, like you said, it was highly celebrated, all right? Now, that document is secondary, is below what the current move that we have seen. And in 4 years' time, another organization, another government will come, or the priority of this present government will change, right? That plan should be developed, supposed to enable development across all the pillars at various levels, because you can't do everything at the same time.
So are you saying the absence of that itself?
Corporate governance will have forced this current government, if it is in place, to consider how to, the implication of now placing emphasis on labor, What will be the consequence on the people who speculated on energy? What is the consequence on people who speculated on education? What's the people, small and medium enterprise, whether we like it or not, to get good skills and retain them is becoming very difficult. Very, very difficult. Okay? So what I'm saying is that corporate governance should, if it is well imbibed in us, or like we presented, okay, things can change. But when it is changing, it should be deliberate. It should be deliberate, right? Deliberacy is in terms of now, because of ABCD reason, training or talent management, HR is going to take higher priority. But the same body will all address, this is not going to kill your investment in education. It's not going to kill your investment here.
I think you're speaking to the first point you made.
Deliberate effort is what corporate governance should have brought into governance. And that, I think, is not done, is not good enough the way we are doing it now.
Thank you. I think you're speaking to the digital strategy alignment, which was the first thing you mentioned.
Yes.
And I'm taking it across those 7 things. I mean, that's why I'm looking at it. Maybe I'll go back to the person who's at the art of policy and implementing, and this will be the last round because we are really starving now, you know. And and digital economy will probably not feel as Tommy's this afternoon. I mean, looking at the realization of this digital economic transformation for us as a people, let me bring it back to the area of data governance. How far have we gone? How much more do you think we need to go?
Happily, Nigeria has been admitted into the Global Privacy Assembly. This is key because around the world today, there is something called adequacy of data protection in a country. Adequacy in the sense that you have the law in place, you have an independent authority, regulatory authority in place, you have the safeguards, generally, the enabling environment. You have all of these in place. And as you also know, no business thrives without data, whether you want to, in any aspect, in any ramification, whether personal data, transactional, and all of those, very important. So today, Nigeria is appropriately positioned. And to demonstrate continuity from the previous administration into this administration, the Nigeria Data Protection Act, we can even use that to illustrate, was signed just barely 10 days of this administration. So the work started from the previous administration, and without wasting any time, His Excellency deemed it fit to sign it into law on the Freedom Day, where everybody probably should be resting. Now, if you look again, the ministry is doing about 3 million people to be trained. If you look at also the last administration, skills development is part of the national policy. So fundamentally, what you may see change, maybe some form of nomenclature, but in essence, just like Mike when he said the fundamentals are strong, the fundamentals are still there in terms of alignment. The deliverables are still there. The goals are still there. For instance, the first pillar in the other, this talks about developmental regulation. And all that you will be seeing also in our ecosystem is about developmental regulation as well. You may call it another name for ease of reference. But the goals, the deliverables, the fundamentals are still very much the same. Nobody can come today and say we don't need broadband penetration. It is not possible. So whichever way you want to achieve it is also very much there. So for us, in terms of data protection, we already have our work cut out for us. We are developing the guidelines, the general application and implementation directives that will enable companies to be able to comply. Under the Act, for instance, they say, we are saying that you could be penalized for 2% of your revenue in the previous year, or 10 million naira, whichever is higher. But this is a provision we never applied. Why? Because we are conscious of the ecosystem. The essence of it is to enable Nigeria businesses to grow, to become competitive, not to kill them with fines.
Okay,
and that
so
is something
we are
have brought
moderating
from
the corporate governance, right? We don't want to kill them.
Yes.
We want to be sure they don't also kill us, right? But that's fine.
Yes.
And maybe just to go to Amal now, we're talking corporate governance. And like I said, I don't believe in the dichotomy of the public and the private because it's just one national economy we're looking at. But we many times tend to vilify the public sector within the private sector in achieving what we're calling corporate governance as a necessary ingredient for achieving digital economic transformation. How do you think this can be scaled? Do you feel comfortable with the level of corporate governance in private sector digital engagements?
So, comfortable may not be the word, right? Any company that is serious and wants to really grow, right, has to put its corporate governance in place, right? Where we have most of the issues is from the government angle, right? So how do you marry the two, right? So I always am an advocate for young entrepreneurs and companies, especially in technology sector. So if you look at what has been happening, how companies are able to grow and get investment into the country is by putting its company in order, right? For us in Outsource, what we've done is from point of entrance of a person into our system, everything goes through a system which is visible to our board and everybody, right? Movement, growth is happening through the system based on your performance and all that. How do we replicate that across Nigeria? So as the government is thinking about our biggest asset, which is the people, right, is thinking about creation of employment. How do we put in corporate governance in the forefront of what we're doing? It's not just creating 3 million talent skill set. It's also how do we get them employed? And the only way we can get them employed is if we grow young entrepreneurs or if we grow companies that can employ them. So how do we marry everything together? How do we get these companies to have very good corporate governance, attract investment into the country, attract investment into those companies, which will now get this 3MMTT and every other employment drive that we're having?
Thank you. And I think that's just a good way to wrap this up, but I won't leave without asking Dr. Coker to speak to this. I mean, everything we've been talking about is on the platform of the Chartered Institute of Directors. And Amal has just said in the private sector, there seems to be a framework that gives a direction. And but this is something that we must do collectively as a people. How should we, or what are the things we need to do to ensure that the issue of corporate governance continues to be at the forefront of conversations for achieving Nigeria's digital economic transformation agenda?
Yeah, technology enables corporate governance. If you have electronic payments, for instance, you block out leakages. You did the one of the projects you worked on was the TSA, the platform that really blocked out quite a lot of leakages, so on. We've got the national identity number with the biometrics now, and also governed with the BVN, and looking at a total sort of national sort of identity framework, which brings in sort of passports as well as so on and so forth. These are the building blocks that enable governance, right? And it's a journey. And you have the governance, in my view, at the sort of government level, and the controls you put in place there, traceability that you put in place, efficiencies you get through technology enablement. The fundamental infrastructure is being laid out and continues to grow. You get the national targets that goes, okay, we've done 50%, next thing is that we'll do 70% of this, okay? We leverage all of that towards improved governance. And it's been a journey we've been on for a while. NDPR is actually one of the leading frameworks in Africa. Okay, it was cribbed off GDPR, the European one, but openly, but it's leading in Africa. Some of the fundamentals that we have in laying out infrastructure is in the right direction, but not there yet. You know, if you look at things that we need to do with enabling education, enabling health, you know, and so on, a lot to do. Private sector, look at the banking industries, you know, there's much that has been done to leapfrog, right? And I remember sitting down at an exco saying, hey, look, you know, I mean, I used to consult for banks in the UK, and I say, well, I used to be CIO for Access Bank, and I say, we're actually a lot better than XYZ Bank in, it's not possible. How could we do that in Africa? Well, we are. As it plays through, you then find that a lot of what we've done has leapfrogged. You know, having SMS, I would insist that by the time the POS pulls out the paper, the customer should have received the SMS of the transaction. And if there's fraud in the process, it means that somebody is able to say, what's going on with my transactions? I mean, this is something we've been doing for 10 years. In the US, it's only been happening now for the last 3 or 4 years. So the government sector fundamental infrastructure is being put in place. It has to be better leveraged, but a lot has been achieved. In the private sector, there's a lot that has been done with respect to expectations, the frameworks you put in place, how you use technology, some of the things that guide governance, international standards, implementing. Those are now just standard in businesses in this country now. A huge amount of progress over the last 15 years. Okay. Still a lot to be done.
But we're making the
fundamental
movement.
Infrastructure going in place.
Thank you very much, and I think that's just a good place to round this. So would you want to just give a round of applause to the panelists? And in rounding off, it is clear that CIOD is taking this seriously. We've talked about the papers that are available. I'm thinking an outcome of this conference will be, particularly from this session, for CIOD to publish its own 7 corporate governance principles to ensure the success of Nigeria's digital economic transformation. All in favor say aye. All of us agree. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Almost on the spot.